Please don't forget to support us on Patreon, Premier Pro Wrestling on Patreon, Premier Pro Wrestling on Pivot, share our official merchandise page, Premier Pro Wrestling Tees. We do have a t-shirt on Redbubble I think you'll like. I stand with Punk. And the company does stand with Punk, as I personally stand with Punk, as I gave Punk his first handful of professional matches. So, like it says in the title, I'm going to go ahead and try this on for size. I'm going to review January 17th NXT. The opening matchup was Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes versus Axiom and Cruz. Trick Williams, what a look. Carmelo Hayes, I think they should just drop Carmelo and just call him Carmelo, period. Axiom, nice to see someone from Spain represent. And I can't say enough good things about Apollo Crews. I thought he was the kid, and I went and checked it out, and it was actually really hard to find what I was looking for. But when I was, in fact, TNA Impact production manager, they brought in Cruz one time, I want to say for a pay-per-view, no rhyme, no reason whatsoever. And they dressed him up like Carl Weathers from Rocky II. And it just didn't get over. Again, there was no rhyme, no reason. And you could tell at that point they didn't know what to do with the young man. So this must have been about 2007. And the things I noticed at the time were, I can't remember who he worked with, but they didn't work with him. He got his mouth busted pretty good, probably to the point where he needed stitches, but he no-sold it. What I did notice is whatever went wrong in that match, he worked his ass off. The kid was a hard worker, and if you could look through the ridiculous gear that they had on him, it's like, man, they don't know what to do with this guy. And they didn't know what to do with this guy, and in part why TNA Impact Wrestling folded. Good match. The only thing I'll say is this. Cruz is in a great spot right now. Doesn't seem like quote-unquote creative knows what to do with him on the Raw or SmackDown brand, but they also know this is not a kid that you let go of. And you can tell by watching this match that Cruz carried the other three guys. Now, I'm not saying the other three guys are the shits whatsoever or bad-talking them. But just like all the other young talent, and that's what NXT is supposed to be, is developmental territory, they just made some of those indie guy mistakes, and also you could tell they were nervous. I.e., Trick and Axiom, I think, started the match, and they did a couple of really cool things, but they killed themselves off even with that planted crowd with the weak suck ducks and the weak suck punches and the weak suck duck the punches. Then Cruz came in, and the plants that even act like they're spoiled plants really popped, and he kind of came in and lit things up, and I wish that he would have been the one to start the match because they would have had that tone set a little bit better. I will point out that Williams and Mello almost killed Axiom when Cruz press slammed him onto them outside the ring, and I think it was probably nerves, but if you notice, if it wasn't for Cruz yeeting that kid, they weren't set for it. They weren't set for it when Cruz went. And Cruz didn't make the mistake because you've got to go, especially when the camera's on something like that. Now, they did some really great, innovative stuff right in the middle of the quote-unquote heat, but they killed it off because it was a real goofy way to go into that four-way, and they were all in there for 30 seconds, and I know that they probably even got a bit of heat from the office for the way they got into that. And I'm not talking about the performers because this isn't on the performers or talent. This is on whoever booked it. The performers got to listen to them. But at the end of the day, what an outstanding finish. And the way that really got over, and even though Williams and Mello did the quote-unquote job, just being in the ring for that long with Apollo Crews and Axiom 2, it was a hell of a learning experience for both of those guys who have great looks, and they also have a lot of talent. So the woman's segment / vignette, promo, whatever you kids call it these days, with the heels being JC and Gigi. It was something I felt like I had to endure, and you could tell that the planted crowd also felt that way. But here's the thing. They have to get an opportunity to work that microphone somewhere at some time so the company can see if there's anything to work with. At the end of the day, all four of those girls, especially JC and Gigi, have a lot to work with. The Dijak promo was good, or vignette I'm going to call it, and the Wesley thing with Dijak build-up was good too. Problem is, I didn't know who this guy with the look and that well-produced vignette promo was till afterwards, until they popped the screen up that said Dijak versus Wesley. See what I'm saying? They spent a lot of money on that NXT, and also that kid is convincing. He can talk. They put him in the best light they possibly could. But one of the things is, and I don't know if he's still there or what his role is, but Terry Taylor was with NXT for a while. I hope that he still is. His greatest gift that he doesn't even know of is what he used to do is he would feed the announcers in their headsets where we were inside of 15 seconds so anybody flipping channels could stop and know who, what, when, where, and why. Obviously, if he's there, he's not in a production capacity, but that was kind of a waste of what I would call revenue. The sit-down type promo, I guess I'm going to call it, with Grayson, it just kind of doesn't fit with the brand. Could have gone about a third as long as it did, and it kind of got silly. It sillified the storyline or the angle. But I will say, what a great finish they had going into this cage. I will say, Grayson reminds me of a young Alex Wright, and that is a compliment. Not sure if he can wrestle like Alex Wright, but the things that they showed in the highlights, he sure can move. And you can't say enough about Braun or Steiner's kid. The guy is a savant. So the Gallus, it was cool to see them fade into commercial with a lead in so you don't turn the channel and come back. Problem is, like I was talking about with Raw and promos and all that, the Gallus needs to learn how to enunciate. Couldn't understand them. I didn't and couldn't figure out their name until they came out and it was on a screen. Briggs and Jensen, they're just too nervous, and in my opinion, all four guys, they got to learn when to slow down, learn when to speed up and tighten up, and they kill themselves off right away, in my opinion, with the weak suck brawling. The referee fucking up for the babyface cutoff didn't help, and unfortunately, the girl who is cute is an afterthought. I don't even know her name. And, I think that these guys need more time in the ring. And just like Tony Khan's wrestling company, NXT needs to be running house shows so these guys can work together more outside of a performance or training center. I also need to point out with the Gallus versus Briggs and Jensen match, you can tell by watching these guys were over-agented. They're too green to be over-agented, and they were trying to listen to more people than one. And number two, they can't listen to that and follow direction and also make something theirs. Again, NXT's got to run house shows. So don't forget, I haven't watched NXT in a year, probably more. But again, in regards to the Briggs-Jensen thing, they got a vignette with one girl complaining about another girl, and I don't even know those girls' names. They're not thinking about that for the first-time viewer, and that's not how you attract new viewers when you're on a network station. And that second promo was great with my boy Cruz and Trick Williams and Melo Hayes. Pretty good. They both, or all three, looked really comfortable out there, and that was entertaining. I think that's what they're looking for Raw, SmackDown, and what you kids today call the main roster. So this segment with the New Day, my first reaction is if I've got the New Day down at NXT, I'm going to have them in a match and then do a promo. Just to do a promo just doesn't make sense to me because it's supposed to be developmental territory. Learning for this talent. First they talk about upcoming with Gallus, but how good does Gallus look or credible does Gallus look even if they're better, which I wouldn't know, than that match they just had? Nobody's over. The other thing is I feel awful for this Pretty Deadly. I see where they're going with it and they're putting money into the Pretty Deadly thing, but I don't think the WWE fan is ready to accept the gimmick or work with the gimmick or hate the gimmick because people are going to feel bad to hate the gimmick, and there aren't enough overly PC people to support their gimmick. So all I can say when I look at those two is I can't take them seriously no matter what they do, and I just think to myself, oh, those poor kids. Hopefully it'll come back to them in Aces down the road with another gimmick. I liked how the New Day carried that bit about Gallus not being able to talk, and they popped the place and they said, I couldn't really understand what you said, but judging by your body language, we figured you came here to fight. The pole part just didn't work again because the aforementioned, and the biggest thing is having a bad television match, which is probably the most of the TV time on the NXT episode this week. So I guess the sit-down is a staple of NXT's programming, and I'm just not buying it, and I don't think the people will buy it. There's something called market research. What that is here with these sit-downs is very Jeremy Borash-esque. TNA Impact 2006 and 7. The history should tell you that people don't respond to it. Now, I've seen Breaker work, and again, I believe he's a savant inside that ring, and he's got to get experience in talking. But the speech doesn't match his look, his in-ring character. And by going into a cage match and you exploit the fact that this kid is not ready to be on the microphone for a long sit-down, much less a promo or vignette, less is more. Put him in a situation where he has to say less, stay intense, and capitalize off of his look. Too much talky, and at the end of the day, I don't think the WWE fan is going to give a shit if the NXT pay-per-view is to draw money or draw views or buys. That being said, I don't think that it's going to be a revenue stream or its own brand like it once was. Of course, it's a place where these guys are supposed to be cultivated and taught, but at the end of the day, less is more. You got to let Braun do that stuff in piecemeal. It's kind of like watching an old promo from Mike Tyson back in the day when he was Braun's age or Breaker's age. He'd knock you out when he'd hit you in the chin, but you hand him a microphone and nobody's intimidated or buying it. The difference is that was boxing and this is wrestling. Don't do that to the kid. So the last match on NXT this week, that tag match with Lyra and Roxanne taking on Toxic Attraction. First thing I want to say is that I think Toxic Attraction and Roxanne are ready to go to the roster. Second thing I want to say is I hope that the orange-haired girl from Toxic Attraction does not lose an ounce. I'm sure there's probably some garbage going around the internet and maybe possibly shaming that girl, but she's a great athlete, and if she lost 1 ounce, it would kill the believability that she has, so I hope she doesn't. Roxanne, balls out, and if you notice at the beginning of this match, which started hot, which would normally be a mistake because it started hot with the slugging and the fists of fury and the brawling, like the men's match did earlier with some guys that are supposed to be, fucking lunch eaters. These four girls hit each other harder than the men. They were agented just right, and it's nice to see NXT end with the best match. The sad part is the live crowd was spent from all that other crap earlier in the night, so they didn't bite as much as they would have if the match would have been on earlier. And I've got to say, the Toxic Attraction are great fucking heels. All right, hope you guys are appreciating me. I guess I'm going to call it rating or commentating or commenting or sharing my views on the World Wrestling Entertainment products. Don't forget, you're going to see this stuff without YouTube ads on it. So please support our company, my company, Premier Pro Wrestling, PPW, Premier Pro Wrestling on Patreon, where you can stream over 500 matches. It's probably the best money you'll invest in pro wrestling. Also, we're on Pivot Share, Premier Pro Wrestling, and Pro Wrestling Tees. And please like and subscribe while you're here. Help us to build our company. And if you're interested in pro wrestling training, retraining, or getting better, hit us up. We'll figure something out if you pass the criteria. And the criteria is basically a Premier Pro Wrestling when it comes to training, retraining, honing. Just don't be an asshole. Thanks again, guys.